Welcome. My name is James Hart, and I'm the Senior Director here at the Eriksholm Research Centre. Now, I'm very happy to introduce for you today this new concept, the Eriksholm Update videos, where what we're going to do is a couple of times a year, we're going to produce these videos to show you what's hot or new research projects that we have going in Eriksholm that we think you would be interested in and we want to share. Today, we're going to talk about two broad topics. Firstly, artificial intelligence, and secondly, cognitive hearing science. And what we're going to do is we're going to invite in a couple of our experts at Eriksholm in order to share with you their thoughts and their experiences about how they see these topics impacting hearing healthcare in the future. For the last 47 years at Eriksholm, we've actually conducted research into hearing impairment and the broader implications that has on people's lives. For the last couple of years, we've actually introduced a new research theme for us, namely artificial intelligence. This is where we look at how we can optimize technology to best support an end user's or a hearing impaired person's individual hearing loss, as well as a hearing care professional's practice. I would like now to introduce Jesper Jensen. He's a fellow at DMANT. He's also a professor of acoustic signal processing at Aalborg University. So, welcome, Jesper. How do you see the modern engineering methods that artificial intelligence and machine learning represent? How do you see them impacting hearing aid development in the future?
So I think AI in general allows us to solve problems that were very difficult for us to solve before. So one of the problems is to provide the right sound at the right time for a hearing aid user. And it sounds trivial perhaps, but it's not. So imagine you're a hearing aid user at a dinner party. Are you interested in listening to the person in front of you, the person is next to you, or maybe the jazz band playing in the back? This is hard to figure out. So first we need to figure that out. And next we need to retrieve the sound of interest from all these competing sound sources. It's a very difficult problem. AI allows us to attack the problem.
Okay, thank you. That does sound a little bit like the cocktail party problem, something we've been tackling and working with for, frankly, decades. So why does AI and why do you think that machine learning methods can actually help us make some sort of tangible progress in these situations?
So traditionally, we've been using mathematical models of physics. So speech production, sound propagation, sound perception. That's all good, and that has provided us some progress. AI is an entirely different way of approaching the problem. So the way we build AI systems is a little bit like teaching a child. So for example, a child touches a stove and it's hot. And the child learns immediately that stove is hot, right? So this is an immediate feedback. And hopefully the child will learn that stoves in general can be hot.
Hopefully without injury, but yes.
Hopefully without injury. Yeah. And the way that we build AI systems, in particular systems based on supervised learning, is to provide feedback to a system, to give the system examples and provide feedback. Did the system do the right thing or not? Yeah. So imagine that we have a noisy speed signal that we would like to enhance. The system will get a noisy speed signal as an input. It'll do something initially. It's naive. It doesn't know exactly what to do. Garbage will come out. Then we will tell the system we want a clean speed signal coming out. And the system, or we can adjust the system's parameters so that next time around, it will do a little bit better. And this is a gradual process. We can repeat it many times, and eventually the system has learned what to do. So implicitly the system has learned the laws of physics, and much better than what we could do with the traditional models that we have been relying on so far.
Right, okay. Could you give me maybe an example of one of the sort of the concrete projects that you've been working on then recently?
Yeah, so one of the cool things we've been looking at is to try to figure out what is it that the user wants. And the one way of doing that is to look at the user's conversation behavior. So when you are interested in a particular person, you talk to the person and you take turns. So one way to identify who are you interested in is to monitor the user's speaking behavior and try to match it with a person that with whom you take turns. So this is one way to identify who are you interested in, and a very cool way of doing that.
Yeah, certainly sounds very, very cool. So with that, thank you very much, Jesper, for sharing this with us. I'd now like to talk to you about two other topics that are focusing on cognitive hearing science. In order to effectively communicate and to engage with our listening environments, we all make use of various different cognitive processes in order to help us do this. These are things like directing your attention or working memory. Now, the minute you have a hearing impairment, we actually have to rely more heavily on these processes, and this is inherently effortful. Now, if you have increased effort, this can lead in principle to increased fatigue. We think then this can lead to some kind of listening-related stress, and this stress can then lead to avoidance behavior. In other words, people avoiding going into challenging communication situations or noisy environments or reverberant environments. And ultimately, we think this is all leading to some of the very negative mental health consequences of untreated or at least poorly treated hearing impairment. So I'd like now to introduce Hamish Innes-Brown. He's a senior research manager here at Eriksholm. He's also an adjunct associate professor at the Technical University of Denmark. Welcome, Hamish. So based on what I've just been saying about listening effort, could we be forgiven in thinking that it is only ever a negative or a bad thing?
Yep, you could be forgiven for that because it is a message that we've been hearing. In the hearing industry and in hearing research, we've been looking at listening effort for quite a long time, for decades now, and it has often been described as a negative thing. And it is a negative thing. If you invest a lot of effort, you get tired. However, it comes with benefits as well. If the listening situation is important and you need to invest effort, then there's a reason for that. So you get benefits from investing listening effort as well.
Okay, yeah. So I've heard about the Easily project, which is dealing with this kind of some of the positive aspects associated with listening effort. Could you maybe tell me a little bit more about that, the structure of the project, who the partners are?
Yeah, so that is a European Commission doctoral network. It has 6 PhD students, 5 universities, 4 commercial partners, one of which is Oticon.
Yeah.
And it's a big network where these 6 PhD students are all looking at this balance between the positive and negative consequences of investing effort into listening. It's a really interesting construction, these doctoral networks. It's also an industrial doctoral network, and that means that these 6 PhD students, they spend half their time in a university and they spend half their time in one of the industrial partners. And here at Eriksholm, we're going to be hosting 3 of those 6 students at different points throughout the progression of the project. So we've got 3 of them. The first one is already in Amsterdam, and she's looking at ways of assessing the physiological response to effort using mobile kind of technology. So stuff that you can wear and continually look at the effort, the listening effort.
Right.
Then we have another student here at Eriksholm. He's using neural measures, so functional near-infrared spectroscopy as well as pupillometry, to look at decision-making processes in the brain. So we know the brain is kind of continually assessing the effort-reward kind of balance, and it's actually a decision-making process. So we're looking at the brain mechanisms associated with that. And then finally, there's another student she's starting her project in University of Manchester, looking at individual differences in how people are susceptible to fatigue associated with effort.
Right.
And in all of those cases, after the university part is done or after the industrial part is done, they switch and then apply their learning in the new scenario. So it's quite a interesting construction.
Yeah. Could you maybe, a lot of that does sound like quite basic science. Could maybe you tell me a little bit more about how you see this being applied in the real world from these different projects?
Yeah, so a good example is the student we have here who's using these neural measures at decision making. He's going to do that here. and then he's going to take that learning into more workplace situations in Amsterdam. So there's one of the commercial partners is a company that makes adjustments to the workplace.
Right.
So they install sound deadening material, they make adjustments to how people are sitting, they can install active noise cancellation systems. So he will learn about these decision-making processes, take them to those workplace situations and assess the benefits of how those systems can actually reduce these negative consequences or allow people to perform longer while they're at work.
So you could see some very practical outcomes from this type of research.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Hamish. That was very, very interesting.
Thanks, James.
So we know cognitive abilities and the processes that we use in order to support communication are extremely important when dealing with hearing impairment. I would like now to introduce Dorothea Wendt, who is a principal scientist here at Eriksholm, as well as an adjunct associate professor at the Technical University of Denmark. So welcome, Dorothea. From your perspective, why is cognition such an important thing to bring into the discussion about managing hearing care in the future?
Yeah, good question. I mean, as you stated rightly, cognition counts for all of us. As soon as we are communicating with somebody, as we do right now, we're relying on our cognitive functions in order to understand what has been said while preparing our response. So we have to be very fast as well. This is true for people with hearing difficulties, of course, as well. On top of that, hearing loss often comes with age, and age is related to elements of cognitive decline. So there is an interaction of cognitive functions and hearing loss when it comes to speech understanding. Now, it's reasonable to ask, is there also an interaction of cognitive abilities and potential hearing aid benefits? So this has been studied before, some of our own work indicating that people with better working memory capacity would benefit potentially more from very specific compression settings. Now, this is 20 years old work. The signal processing in the hearing aid has changed quite a bit. So it's really time to update our knowledge in that area.
So, Dorothea, I mean, Eriksholm is here to take basic science, or what we find out there in the hearing research community, and we try and find ways of applying it. So what are you doing practically then to take cognition and try and find avenues with which that can be applied in managing hearing healthcare?
Yes, let me give you a concrete example. We have started a PhD project last year together with University of Western Ontario in Canada and Professor Ingrid Johnsrud. Ingrid has a background in clinical psychology, so she's been working in this area for many years. And so what we're currently doing in the project is basically developing a cognitive test battery that is more suitable to be applied in a clinical environment. Hence, we have identified a number of requirements for the test battery. One is that we would like to work with user-operated tests. So people or patients could run the tests on their own without being supervised by an audiologist.
Yeah.
So they could do it at home before they even come to the clinic, or they could do it while waiting for their appointment in the waiting hall. So what are we going to do with the test battery? We wanted to understand how the outcome of the test, identifying a certain cognitive profile, could help us better understand how this person could benefit even more from specific hearing aid settings, for example, noise reduction settings or compression settings. So very general, the long-term vision of that work is, could we provide an even more tailored solution or intervention with our hearing aids by not only looking at the auditory profile, but also considering the cognitive profile of our users.
So really bringing in cognition into the personalization that we would naturally do as part of the clinical management.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Dorothea. That was extremely interesting to hear your opinions about how we can bring cognition into clinical practice in the future. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope very much that you've enjoyed it. If you would like to know more, please go and have a look on our websites. And if there is particular topics that you find there that you think you would like to see more of in future videos, please write to us to let us know. So with that, see you next time.